Hey guys, it's Lego Boy C3. Today I'm going to show you how to solve the 4x4. And so this is going to be my tutorial on the 4x4 Rubik's Cube. So this is a very beginner tutorial. I'm going to be showing you the easiest way, the most basic way to solve this cube. However, the one requirement is you must know how to solve a 3x3 already. If you do not know how to do that, go ahead and click the link in the description down below and it will show you how to do that. But once you've seen that tutorial and you already know how to solve a 3x3, we can get on with solving the 4x4. Now the method we're going to be doing today is called reduction. You start with a scrambled cube, then you go around the cube and make groups of centers, like this, and then you pair up groups of edges like this, so you see each edge piece is with its pair, like this, and then basically what it is now is the cube has been reduced to a 3x3, and so you have centers, just like on a 3x3, you have corners, and you have edge pieces, and so you can just imagine this like a 3x3 with really fat edge pieces like this, and you can solve it just like one, getting the cross, and then doing everything that you normally do. And besides a couple of tricky algorithms at the very end, that's pretty much all there is to it. And so before we begin, we need to learn some notation. And so on a basic 3x3, you may recall that this would be the U face, this is the R, F, L, D, and B. And so there's one additional move that you can use on a 4x4, which is called the wide move. So this would be a wide U move, which is pretty much a U move, except turning both layers like this. And it would be written as U, W. W, of course, means wide. And so you could also have things like an RW prime, like this, where you turn the right side counterclockwise, but a wide move. You could also do something like this, which would be BW2, turning the back layer twice with a wide move, and you can just do that on all sides. However, for the first couple steps, we're not going to be needing that, so we can just scramble the cube up like this, and we can begin. So like I mentioned before, the first step of the 4x4 is to get all the centers, and so groups of 4 center pieces like this need to go together. But to do that, what we want to do is make groups of 2 centers. And once we have 2 groups of 2, like that and that, we can put them together and make a center. And so we'll start off with the white side because that's probably what you learned how to do on a 3x3 first. And so what we'll do is we'll find 2 white center pieces like this, and we have to move them together to make a bar, a 2x1 bar, like I showed you earlier. But we can't just move it down like that because you see they're not lined up. And so what instead we can do is move one of them out of the way, and now we can bring them together. And so there's one white bar, so now we have to get the other one. So we find the other 2 white center pieces, which just happen to be here and here. And so we can line them up so when we put them together, they'll be together. But you may notice if we move them together like that, we'll mess up what we already have. And so a simple solution to this, in this case, you would just move it out of the way. Now we can bring them down together, these 2 pieces together, and now we have the 2 white bars. Now, of course, to put the white bars together, you pretty much do the same thing. You just line them up like this, so they'll go together, and you line them up like that, and now you have the white center. Next up, because we did the white center first, we're going to try and get the yellow center. And so you may know on a 3x3, you have white, and then opposite of that is yellow, and it has to be like that when you're solving a 4x4. And so opposite of white, we're going to do the yellow side up here. So what we'll do to make this a little bit simpler and make it harder to mess up what we already have is we'll just move this off to the left here, and we'll make sure not to do any moves like this or like this to mess up this side. And so we find a couple of pieces, a couple center pieces that are yellow in this layer. There's one here, there's a couple over here, and so we can just move them together. So we want to move these 2 together, and so we can line them up like that, and now we have a bar. And we want to put this on the top where the yellow center goes, but we can't just do it like that because we mess up the white center. And so what we do instead is we move it up, we move it over 2, so do kind of a U2 move like that, and then bring it back down. And there we go. We still have the white center, and we put the yellow bar up at the top. Now what we do is turn it to the side again so we don't mess up this center, and we find the remaining 2 pieces. So there's one there and one here. We can line those up together, and now we put them on top. And so you may want to do it like that, but that's not right because again, we messed up the bottom part. But instead what you have to do is you have to actually line these 2 center pieces up, not so that they'll go together, but so that they're in the same line like this. And so you see you have the white on the bottom, and you have these 2 like this, and then we'll move this up to replace that piece that you have there, over 2 like that, and back down, and now you have the whole yellow center. And so you may come across a little bit of a problem when you're trying to make the yellow center and you already have one bar in. You may notice that you can't find the other center piece. There's one but not another, in the middle layer, and that's probably because it's on top, like it is right here. And so what we want to do in this case is we want to take this part out, this bar across from the bar that we made. We want to take it out, and we can do that by just inserting another bar. And so we can find two other random pieces that aren't yellow, insert it up so it's lined up with this bar, put it up, over like I showed you earlier, and back down. And now we have the two pieces here that we need to make the bar, and we can insert that up like that. Okay, so now we have the white and the yellow centers opposite to each other like this, and so what we want to do is put those on the right and left sides, just to make it harder to mess those up. It doesn't matter which way, any way will work. And so now we need to get the four centers along this axis. So I like to start with red, and so since we're starting with red, we're going to find two red center pieces. These two will work, and we'll line them up like we did earlier. So we'll do a move like that, and now they're lined up, so we can just move them together like that, and now we have a bar. And to prevent this from being messed up, we're just going to do a single move like that. It doesn't matter which way, either way will work. And now we find the other two red center pieces, and we line those up like that, and you may note that it did not mess up this piece because we did that move. And so we bring these together, and now we have the two bars. We can line them up like that, and just bring them together. And so there we go, now we have the red center. But at this point, we'll come across a little bit of a problem. We don't know where the rest of the centers go. You might know that orange goes across from red, but it makes it a lot easier if you do the one right here first. But you need to figure out what this one is. And so to do that, the easiest way if you're a beginner is to just look at a normal 3x3 with a standard color scheme. What you'll do is you'll line up the white one and the red one you see at the top, and you'll see what color needs to go on this side. And so in this case, it's green. And so we know that green must go right here. And so if you were to put the wrong one in, like the orange one or the blue one, it would totally mess you up when you're doing 3x3 and you wouldn't be able to complete the cube. And so we have to put the green one right here. And I just remember this because you have white in the front, red here, and green here. I just have to remember that, and you'll have to remember something like that too. But anyways, time to start green, and so I see that I have two pieces lined up pretty nicely to make a bar. But you may notice if you do a move like that, you will mess up these two red center pieces. But that's fine, all you have to do is move it out of the way, and then bring it back like that, and you see you fixed the red centerpiece like that, and you still have the bar that you made here. And so from now on, when you're doing moves to match up two centerpieces, let's say we wanted to match up these two randomly, you're going to want to make sure that you do a move like that to preserve it, and then move the side back to make sure that you don't mess up the centers that you already have. But anyway, back to green, we have this piece right here, and we can line that up with this piece down here, and you see we'll bring it down, it'll make a bar, we head it off to the side, and bring it back to preserve the red center. And now we have the green and the green right here lined up, and we want to move this bar up next to this bar, so we can just move it up like that. It doesn't matter if you do a double turn when you're doing this, it works the same way, over and back down. And so you see now we have the red and the green centers. And so now we have the last two centers to do, and so you may notice once you solve one of them, they'll both be solved because there'll be no other unsolved pieces that can be on the other side, because it's only two colors left. And so what we need to do is we need to make bars. And so you see, I already have a couple of bars, potential bars, that I could use when I'm making these centerpieces. But what we want to do if we get a case like this is we want to line up two pieces like this. So you see two different color pieces next to each other. And we also want to line up the same pieces down here. And so we have orange and blue, and we want to make bars with orange and blue. And so you see when you bring them together, it makes orange and blue bars. And so we'll do that move. We'll move it off to the side one, and we'll bring it back down, and now we have all the bars that we need to construct the last two centers. But we need to make sure we put these last two centers in the right spot. And so in my case, I know that blue is opposite of green. You already know that white's opposite yellow from the first two centers. And you can also learn that red is opposite orange. But for this case, we're going to use the fact that green is opposite blue. And so what we do, we find the green side right here, and that means that the blue side has to be constructed right here. And so what we can do in this case is put the two blue bars together at the top here by doing, of course, a move like that, over and back down. And there we go, now we have blue, and it's opposite the correct color. Now there are some other cases for the last two centers, but you'd kind of just follow the same logic. So you have orange and blue right here, and you line that up with orange and blue, match them up, make two bars, line them up like this, and bring it back down. And then now you have blue and orange right here, you match those up, and then line it up and bring it back down, and now you have two sets of bars. The same thing goes for this case. You line up blue and orange with blue and orange. You may notice that there are already bars here but we don't want to keep those because it kind of just messes things up. So blue and orange, match those up, make 2 bars, 2 new bars. Now we have these ones and these ones. We can match them up like this and this. Do that, that, and that, just like earlier. And you may notice sometimes when you do the moves like that, you may already have 2 centers constructed, and that's good, except some of the time you may notice that green is not opposite of blue. And so if the 2 centers did form like that in the wrong places, pretty much you just want to move blue to be up in its correct spot. And so we can just do that 1 bar at a time. Move one of them up to the top like that, and then move the other one up into it, over, and back down. And there we go, the centers are constructed once again. Okay, so now on to edges. So you may have noticed on the last step that you can do any outer layer turn, no wide moves, but just outer layer turns on this cube. It's not going to mess anything up at all. The centers will still remain the same, just like doing normal moves on a 3x3 that doesn't mess up the centers. And so we can use this to our advantage to match up pieces that we want next to each other. And so what we want to do is we want to get 2 edge pieces, just this little part of an edge. We want to get 2 of them that have the same colors on them next to each other. And so that will look something like this. If we were to do the yellow and red pieces, these 2 right here, we move them next to each other, and you'll notice when you do a move like that, it'll line them right up like that. And so what we want to do is we want to line 2 of them up, do an R move, U move, R prime move. It's not really an algorithm, just kind of a sequence of moves, putting this edge onto the top layer, replacing it, and moving it back down. And then you undo that set it move that you did, and you have this edge created. And so I'll show you that a bunch more times. So we have a piece right here, we find the piece that goes with it. Here it is right next to it. And so in this case, we can't just move them right together. It doesn't work because they're on the same layer. And so in this case, what you can just do is do a double move like that, and now they'll be on different layers and you can match them up together. You can do a double move, it's just the same as doing a single move. It'll work exactly the same. And now what we can do is bring it up to the top layer, bring it over, bring another piece over like that, and bring it back down. And then match up the middle layers, and we're good to go. On to the next pieces. We have a white and blue piece here, and another white and blue piece here. We can match those up so they're on opposite layers, but they'll go together. You see right there. Bring it up to the top layer, over, back down, and do a double move. And then you pretty much continue on doing the same thing with all other edge pieces. So you can do outer moves freely, just to get pieces like from over here to over here if you wanted to. And so we have these 2 pieces matched up right here. Bring them together, up, over to an unsolved piece. You have to make sure this piece that you move over is not solved, and back down. And then undo the set it move. And that is pretty important. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that the piece you move over to the spot where the piece you just made was, right here, you bring it over. You want to make sure that this piece is unsolved, because if it is solved, you'll just end up breaking it up. You don't want to do that. You want to bring it to an unsolved piece over here, and back down and undo the set it move. If you notice after making the pair that no pieces on the top layer are unsolved, what you can do is just flip the cube around. You still have the 2 pieces, and you can just bring it up to an unsolved pair, over, back down, and solve. And then you just continue on doing that down to a point where you have very few pieces that aren't solved, and so most of them are solved here. And so we can bring these 2 together, but you may notice there aren't any on either of the layers that we can bring them to, but that's okay. You may notice that there's another piece that we're not using. These are the 2 pieces that we're using to make this pair, but there's another piece that we're not using, and we can just bring that up to the top layer before we do this move, and then we can bring them together, and then bring it up, over to this unsolved piece, and back down, and undo the move, and there we go. Okay, now once you keep doing that with all the edge pieces around the puzzle, you'll end up with one of 2 things. So the first thing you'll end up with is maybe all the pieces will be correct, all the edge pieces will be paired, and you'll have no problem. Or you could have what I have and have 2 remaining edge pieces that still need to be built. And so you see here, there's no easy way to match these 2 pieces up because you have this part and this part right here. When you match them up, there's no place to put it to. There's no other unsolved edge pieces to use when we're matching them up. So there's seemingly no way to do it. What we want to do instead is just move them next to each other, and so you'll have matching sets of pieces like this. So this is the same piece as this, and this one goes with this, and so we want to just have it in the same layer. So this piece goes with this piece, and so they're in the same layer. If they're not in the same layer, this piece matches up with this piece, you can just move it along like that, and now they are in the same layer. So what you want to do now is bring it over, and I realize that it's not going to be matched up. That's okay. what we want to do now is a simple algorithm, although you don't have to think of it as an algorithm. And so what the actual moves of it are is you put it on the right like this. You do R, F prime, U, R prime, F. And then once you undo the setup move from earlier, you'll see both these pieces are solved. And so I'll do that one more time, this time not using it as an algorithm. And so what we have is we have the two pieces right here. They line up perfectly like that. So this is the piece that you would do the algorithm on from before. But what we'll do instead is we'll just move this side up and the other side up with it. We'll move this piece over from the side it was on to the other side. And then we bring this side down back to where it was and this side down back to where it was. You have to make sure you do it in that order. But then we have the piece is solved just like that. And that's pretty much the equivalent of doing the algorithm from earlier. One more time. Once they're on the same layer, you bring them together like this. Up, up, over, down, down, and back, and now all the edge pieces are solved. Okay, now like I mentioned earlier, what you have now is just a 3x3. You can solve it with whatever method you want. If you're just doing the basic beginner's method, that's fine. If you're doing something like F2L, something more advanced, that's also fine. Just imagine these groups of edge pieces as a single edge on a 3x3. So you see this edge is the equivalent of this edge, and you just solve it just like anyone would normally solve a 3x3. Okay, now once you have the first two layers, no matter what method you use to get to this point, just once you have them, you may notice something weird on the top. You may also not notice it, but some of the time you'll get a weird case. And so basically what it'll be once you're making the yellow cross, you won't get one of the normal cases. If you're using a different method, then it just won't look right. And so you'll notice here that only one edge piece is oriented. It'll be the same thing if you only have 3 of them oriented. Normally what will happen is you'll have 0 of them, 2 of them, or 4 of them. But in this case, you can just get 1 or 3. And so if this does happen to you, you have what we call OLL parity. And so that's basically when we're trying to orient the last layer, but it doesn't work because one of the edges is flipped. And so there is an algorithm to flip one of the edges, which of course is not normally possible on a 3x3, but it is possible because of the middle layer wide turns that you can do on a 4x4. And so what you do if you have this case is you just have to execute an algorithm. This is the basic parity algorithm, and you're just going to have to memorize it. There's no shorter way. And so it's pretty long. What it is it's RW2, B2, U2, LW, U2, RW prime, U2, RW, U2, F2, RW, F2, LW prime, B2, and RW2. And there we go, we're back to a case that we can normally get on a 3x3, and so we can just do our basic algorithm here, and then we line up the edge pieces. And then if you're doing the normal beginner's method, the corners are where it gets kind of difficult. So you may notice here that we have 2 corners that are solved, but 2 corners that are not solved. And so that's a little bit weird. You can't normally have that, and don't try doing this algorithm. It's not going to help. If you're doing a more advanced method like CFOP, the PLL just won't look right. This is called PLL Parity, and it's where you have 2 pieces that are permuted wrong. And so in the basic beginner's method, what it normally is you have 2 corner pieces like this that are in the wrong spot. And in other methods, you could also notice that you have 2 edges that are in the wrong spot. But either way, you fix it the same way. You just do a simple algorithm, and that is UW2, RW2, U2, RW2, R2, U2, RW2, UW2. Just like that. And you may notice it messed things up a little bit for our case, but what we can do is just continue solving the last layer as if nothing had happened, continuing on with moving around the edges, just like we normally do. And then, once we get to the corners again, we solve it like this. And there we go. Now we have a normal case, and we can finish off the cube just as we normally would. And you may have noticed in that algorithm that you had this, and then you had RW2, R2. And you can also perform that as just R2 like that, just a middle layer move, like that. And then finish off the algorithm. And what that'll do is it'll just switch around 2 edge pieces like this, which you can't normally do on a 3x3. And so even though you're not trying to switch 2 edge pieces, you're trying to switch 2 corner pieces, it will fix it if you go and resolve the whole thing. It will fix it, and you won't have parity anymore once you get back to the same step. But there we go, that is just about the end of this tutorial. I hope it wasn't too long for you guys, but I really wanted to explain everything in a lot of detail, so even the beginners out there will still understand everything well enough that you'll be able to solve this cube now. But if you can't solve this cube, if you're stuck on any step in particular, go ahead and leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to help you. Another way that you could get help is just kind of helping yourself and moving pieces around the cube, figuring out how different moves affect different pieces, and figuring out exactly what I mean by what I say in this tutorial, and kind of just figure it out by yourself. But yeah, if that doesn't work for you, leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to get back to you on what you need to do to be able to fix it. And so that's pretty much it for this video. If you liked it, then definitely leave a like down below because it took me a really long time to make. Leave some suggestions for other videos or tutorials that you want me to make, like this video, in the future. And also stay subscribed to be notified when the next video like this comes out. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!